don't know what you missed in my ramblings. Neutrality swindle. Sometimes my phone likes to save its own memory by stopping the recording on its own, or maybe my finger slips or something. Israel should be gunning against Switzerland since they were the recipients. See, this just looks so fairy story, even though it's like juniper trees, which are not pleasant to walk through. But it looks so like organized and like rounded, mounded. You can't see the piles of the rocks like you used to be able to see, but a lot of the portion, or a significant portion of the gold Switzerland received from the concentration camps came out of Jewish people's mouths. But Israel has had its first embassy in Switzerland, and Switzerland had one of the first embassies in Israel, or whatever you call that, diplomatic establishments. Like, why were they so involved with each other from the beginning? Literature review I just want to express because it was getting to me. This writer named Peggy Orenstein writes about sexuality and American culture. She's a journalist, and she's a pretty prolific writer, but her agenda seems off because I really wanted to address her directly, but it's a lot of effort, and what's the point of that? I mean, I'd like her to open her eyes, but like, she covers rape culture, sex empowerment, pervasiveness and inequality of power, of sexuality, these type of subjects automatically start implicating, processes of mind control, where you have people that just snap into certain behaviors because of programming. But she doesn't address that at all. She doesn't address ritual abuse at all. She doesn't address abuse, childhood abuse by adults or other children within families. She doesn't address any of that, which, to me, you can't take one from the other, because where are people getting these dysfunctional sexual behaviors from? Like, she puts that on messages received from popular culture, which is something, but obviously it runs a lot deeper than that. 30% of females experience these types of processes. Looks like a really old tree, so twisted. I love these trees in here that aren't juniper. I feel like the juniper is an invasive species put here by the, Freemason forest tenders because of, this is a big one, because their impenetrableness. They try to block off access to these historical sites that they can't afford to mark as parks and properly preserve their historical value, so they just cover it up and destroy it, scatter the rocks, cut apart the megalithic structures. Yes, that is what happens so frequently. Nor does she talk about the disassociation that happens with people that practice, not personal gain sexual practices. When you're performing sex acts for the benefit of others. Is this onion already? Yeah, that is onion already. Wow. You could come out harvesting. Part of a drainage creek. this side of the creek, this is going up across to the part where I started, but across the top of the other side of the canyon, there's a neighborhood abutting it, and there's like this cool like stone bench that makes me curious of its origins, and it seems very old. Has a interesting draw to it. This might take me down to another part of the creek crossing. Yeah, disassociation. Why don't people talk about that? It's like, people take advantage of it, but they don't bring it to the public's attention. Because to me, it makes so much sense about, it's the psychology of people. The writer explains it, but justifies it as moral or normal difference between generations. Yeah, that's another thing she does, like kids these days, type of explanation. The writing is enlightening, but missing the ritual abuse in society. The abuse that causes PTSD, if not complete dissociation, obscuring the two-faced nature of society. Do I cross here? Why does the path lead here? Tell me, is there a path on the other side here? I've done this before, but only once. Whoa. What's going on? Ow, that was prickers. Oh, this is interesting because it's two parts of a creek in the middle. Usually burials lie here in this type of landscape as well, because it's a human constructed landscape. There's the path. Did I see that right? Oh, is this the elderberry here? Onion's already going into bloom. That's a short one. Always keep your eyes open for 3-leaved poisonous plants near water. Poison sumac. I know around this area I was affected by it, and it is no picnic. Not even a little bit. It's better to be aware and save yourself the trouble. What a kept mess this place is. Well, it's rude to call it a mess, but I feel like people put these, I'm gonna have to come across. Maybe I'll just walk down the street. I have to cross this again. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Oh. Is this even a path? I don't know. Probably not. I just want to kind of go to that bench, but let's see. I'm like halfway. I'm almost done with my notes, really. I don't want to hike through this at all. Old trees, old trees. This is a path. It's Probably a deer trail. I mean, this is an older path, but there's like a triangle rock up there. Maybe I'll come to the bench some other time and check out the top of that park, because I've never done that. Another day, perhaps. Spring onions. Today is like March 22nd or something like that. Yesterday we had storms of wind and thunder, and this landscape is interesting. For the most part, the weather's unpredictable in Texas, but generally enjoyable. Yeah. Battling Brook. This doesn't look too bad with the algae, actually. The water's pretty clear. Interesting. It's interesting the way the indigenous people built waterways to filter. You know, they had different uses for their water, for like washing and drinking, and they definitely kept them organized. Wow, is that a diaper? Oh, wow, these trees are very old. Beautiful. Obscuring the two-faced nature of society. So much dissociation. Psychological breaks. I would like Peggy Orenstein to write about sex trafficking. Judicial industry, capitalism, political, educational, economic inequality. They talk about top-down dissemination of pop culture, sexual messaging. Ooh, big rocks. Big rocks, big trees. Sexual messaging and visualization. Only bell hooks ties these incongruities of society to these incongruities toward humanity to culture of domination. Only a conspiracist would tie that to the spiritual realm, shamanic nature, reptile source. People do that too in talk of like ritualization. Maybe that looks broken. This doesn't look like the original configuration. Are these all onions? Wow. Is that a path that goes right up the ridge? Visions are psychotic under scientific perspective. The evidence of eugenic and occult forces that dominate society can't be denied in my perspective. And I ended there. Yeah. I'm gonna try to find my way back to the trail. I'll check in with you when I get back to the parking lot and show you the rocks up there, because I noticed how interesting they were. Here's another hole to the underground with these probably not bedrock megaliths. There is definitely poison oak in here. Well, I hope this leads back to the trail. Going up to the top of that ridge where all the houses are, getting chased by dogs and seeing an uncomfortable amount of shrubby, what looked to be poison oak. It's everywhere, but no, the amount of red on these rocks, it'd be interesting to study these out. Like, I feel like they could have been part of a bigger configuration, one solid megalith that was then cut apart. These flat surfaces don't seem to be made by machine, but the amount of red on there is a very interesting thing. There's a bunch of them. I always found these rocks interesting.